So I hope you've really enjoyed learning about all the new and exciting methods for working with Excel. I think a lot of people will get a lot of mileage from just the things that I've covered here. But if you are interested in taking things to the next level, where do you go from here? A lot of people will think maybe I should start looking into things like array formulas or VBA or databases. I've used all of those methods for over a decade, and you may be surprised to find out that I don't actually use any of those anymore. So what do I use instead? A good friend of mine showed me a tool called R, which I had previously never heard of before, and it changed my life. Just everything that I used to do with array formulas, VBA, and databases, I could do in R significantly easier than those other methods. Now, one of the nice things about R is I can quite easily work with, say, 10 million records of data as easily as I could work with a few thousand inside of Excel. Now, you may be thinking, well, I don't have like 10 million records of data to work with. When you have the ability to work with bigger data sets, you'll find that you can quite easily start to make that up. For example, right now in Excel, you may be loading a single month's snapshot worth of data. What if instead you could load monthly snapshots for every month for the last 10 years? Then all of a sudden, your analysis starts to get a lot more interesting. You're able to not just look at a single snapshot view, but time series analysis of how all of that changes over time. Now, why is it much easier to learn R than it is to learn VBA? Well, the reason for that is that VBA isn't actually designed to manipulate data. It's designed to manipulate what's called the Excel document object model, which basically is referring to things like worksheets and cells, and not actually structured data. So there's no easy way to, say, call up one of your columns, like if you want to access your value column or your grouping column. In Excel VBA, that's not actually that trivial to do. Whereas in R, that's kind of built into the language, so it's very easy to do with, say, a single line of code. In VBA, even if you have a well-structured model using tables and named ranges, it's going to be a lot harder to reference all the different elements, and you're going to have to write a lot more code just to do things like loop through the different values in a column, none of which are necessary if you're working with R. When compared to a database, R gives you a lot more functions than you get with SQL. It's typically a lot easier to write. It can actually generate the SQL for you if you're connecting to databases, so you don't necessarily need to learn another query language. And also, it's much faster. And the reason for that is that databases are actually designed for things like transactions and not for analysis. So they actually run really slow. And that's because they run off disk. Anytime you need to retrieve some data, your query needs to go to the hard drive, pick up that data, do some calculations on it, and then return the results back. With R, everything is done in memory, which basically means it's exponentially faster. Now, a lot of people use things like Access or SQL Server databases to build these little databases on their desktop to do things like joins and that sort of thing. Now, by using Power Query, a lot of that will disappear and you might not have to do any of that at all. But if you're still getting to the point where you think, oh, I still need like a database, like an Access database or a SQL Server database to do some of these calculations or, say, store my data model, you're probably going to be much better off just moving to R instead. One of the latest things I've been doing with R is looking at organizational design techniques using things like network analysis. These are really exciting tools which make it significantly easier to solve certain types of problems when compared to any other types of tools available, such as Excel or relational databases. As you can probably tell, I am a huge fan of R, and it's definitely one of my favorite tools to use and to teach. I'm also a huge advocate of finding and using the right tool for the job, and Excel and R are really just two of them. They're both really great tools because they're so general purpose, and so you can use them for a lot of different things. Now, there's a whole range of other different tools as well. For example, we have all the BI data visualization tools like Tableau. Power BI we've looked at a little bit within this series of lectures. Oracle data visualization, QlikView, QlikSense, all of these sort of fit into the same sort of category of tools and make it very, very easy to produce great looking data visualizations to do rapid exploratory data analysis without having to write any formulas or code at all. They're also quite capable of working with the larger data sets and are able to scale much better throughout your organization by being hosted centrally and tapping directly into your larger data stores. The only limitation of scaling these applications out tends to be the licensing cost, which again is an area that platforms such as R and Python come in quite handy. There are some really new and exciting tools which allow for non-technical people to build some really powerful applications and models without having to write any code or very little code and eliminate the need for any IT support. If you're interested in finding out more about this bold new world, I am on a mission to research the very best and most groundbreaking technologies to make them more accessible to you. Please visit my website in order to get access to free resources as well as find out about other lectures that I'm teaching.